Imagine that overnight, not just a company, but an entire era collapses. What if America's most recognizable brand suddenly loses the support of allies, the trust of consumers, and control of its empire? What if the entire world, step by step, turns its back on one man and his dream?
Teslas are being torched across the country. Dealerships shot up and set on fire. Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
Spring 2025. At first glance, it was business as usual. Gigafactories were running, stocks were trading. Tesla remained a symbol of the technological revolution. But beneath the surface, something more was maturing. Not an economic downturn, but a true geopolitical upheaval. In just 8 weeks, there was a collapse that had not been preceded by an earthquake or a global cataclysm. His name is Elon Musk.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them, that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
Canada suddenly freezes federal subsidies, depriving Tesla of millions of dollars and thousands of orders. 2 days later, nickel and lithium supply disruptions begin. Another week later, an export embargo. Mexico, yesterday's ally, refuses tax breaks. Europe responds with a strategic strike. Duties, bans, exclusion of Tesla from subsidy programs. German customs officials block shipments. The French cancel orders. The Italians revoke licenses. And none of this is an economic mistake. It's a response to years of neglect, arrogance, and ruined diplomacy.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
But the blowback doesn't just come from the outside. Within the very walls of Tesla itself, a revolt is brewing. Bonuses disappear, recycling rises, equipment breaks down, and workers who believed in a future on wheels walk off the assembly lines. Videos from the factories go viral. Messages saying, "We built this, and he broke it," go viral on social media. Elon Musk, someone who once inspired, now inspires anger, fear, and alienation.
KTLA Samantha Cortese joins us live with more on the wave of vandalism in protest of Elon Musk and his role in Washington. Sam?
Hi, Sharon, Micah. The ATF and FBI are collaborating with federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate acts of domestic terrorism surrounding Teslas.
And while Musk posts another meme on Twitter, competitors aren't messing around. China's Biden is pushing Tesla out of Asia, signing deals with Brazil and South Africa. Volkswagen is taking over Europe without wasting a day, offering affordable local, subsidized electric cars. And a new center of power is unfolding in Saudi Arabia, with Lucid at the helm and no Tesla on the list of partners. When an economy is cracking at the seams and the Dow index loses 9% in a month, it's not just a brand failure. It's a loss of confidence in an entire country. America is no longer invited to energy summits. New international alliances are being forged without her. And the world, inspired by the idea of electric cars, continues to move on, just not for the US anymore. What happened? Why has Tesla, once a symbol of progress, become a pariah? And can America still regain its lost influence? Now you're about to hear what investors, politicians, and even the company itself have been silent about. This isn't just the story of Tesla's downfall. It's the beginning of a new global era, without Elon Musk and without the United States at the forefront.
over the last couple of months. But the other thing that this could potentially be is an attempt at readjustment or correction by the Trump administration, in that one of Trump's closest kind of allies and supporters, and someone who's clearly very influential in the administration, is coming out to kind of push back against the recently implemented policies. So I'm thinking, or maybe hopeful is the right word, that this might be a signal that the administration is considering walking back some of those policies.
More painful blows followed. The provinces of Alberta and Quebec took independent action, restricting the export of materials strategically important to Tesla: nickel, cobalt, and lithium. These resources were supplied to gigafactories in Nevada and Texas under long-term contracts. But within days, deliveries were either delayed or diverted to European competitors. Tesla was left without raw materials, without logistical support, and without the ability to quickly reorient itself. All alternative routes required months of preparation, certification of new partners, and financial guarantees that were no longer available.
So there are a couple of things that might be going on here. So on the one hand, it could be that just at a very basic level, Musk has quickly observed a 40% decline in sales in Tesla in Europe.
Behind the scenes, there was one simple fact: Tesla had become a bargaining chip in a geopolitical game. For Canada, it was revenge for the US refusal to support reform of the Critical Minerals Agreement. For Mexico, it was a response to tougher US trade policy. But for Elon Musk, it became a personal war that many analysts believe he started himself. His public remarks about the unfairness of international markets, his refusal to discuss subsidies in private, and his desire to make politicians look ridiculous only exacerbated the crisis.
Does that help Tesla? I mean, you had Tim Walz, who's a huge jerk,
The US government did not have time to intervene. The White House was preparing a response, but Congress was split. Some demanded stronger sanctions against Canada, others demanded negotiations. In the end, nothing was accomplished in 3 weeks. And while Washington was arguing, Europe struck a blow of its own, not in the back, but in the heart. In Brussels, the European Commission approved an emergency package of tariffs on American electric cars, which came into effect on April 28th. Formally, it was a response to US protectionism. In fact, it was a targeting shot at Tesla. On the day the new rules came into force, dozens of trucks with Tesla Model Y arriving at the port of Rotterdam were stopped. The cars were idling at terminals without being cleared for customs clearance. Dealerships across Europe reported massive pre-order cancellations. In France, minus 60% in one day. In Germany and Italy, over 50% within a week.
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
Tesla wasn't just losing market share, it was losing credibility. The European consumer, influenced by the media and the ever-increasing anti-American rhetoric, stopped seeing Tesla as innovative. Now it was an expensive, problematic car from a company whose leader mocked the European Union, accused regulators of corruption, and was not shy about statements comparing European politicians to tariff parasites. Meanwhile, Germany's Volkswagen has coolly seized the moment. Its long-standing strategy, the MEB platform, autonomous battery factories, local supply chains, has yielded results. Thanks to the flexibility of production, the concern was able to dramatically increase the production of new models and reduce prices without any loss in profits. Already in May, sales of the ID.4 and Audi Q4 e-tron exceeded Tesla's deliveries. And in the second quarter of 2025, Volkswagen's share of the electric car market in the EU, for the first time, exceeded 40%.
Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, of course, I'm going to respond. And tonight, right here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse now on the president's tariffs.
Tesla, on the other hand, found itself at a standstill. Shipments to Europe had to be suspended. Plants in California and Texas began to slow down production. Thousands of cars were piling up in warehouses. According to inside sources, logistics divisions were forced to cut staff by 12% by the end of May. And that was just the first effect. It was followed by a 38% drop in revenues in Europe and the disruption of $2.1 billion worth of contracts, including fleet deliveries for the German and French governments. But the worst part was not the losses. It was how quickly and cold-bloodedly the former partners abandoned Tesla. Elon Musk didn't just underestimate the political consequences of his rhetoric, he became its target. Europe didn't just put up barriers. It began to build a future without him.
Worse than expected, 336 and 68 vehicles, 336,068 vehicles delivered in the first quarter for Tesla. For a point of reference, the street was expecting, the street account was expecting, based on analyst expectations.
On the other side of the country, in Nevada, middle managers were instructed to prepare lists of high-risk employees, those who could be laid off without serious consequences for the production plan. But the document was leaked to the press, sparking a wave of outrage and the first mass walkout of workers from the Sparks plant. In Fremont, where Tesla's story began, anonymous videos of equipment breakdowns, malfunctioning manipulators and workers falling asleep on night shifts began to surface. This footage quickly spread on social media under the tag WebBuild Tesla. Management remained silent. Musk responded only with sarcasm. In one podcast, when asked about the unrest among employees, he chuckled and said, "If anyone doesn't like being part of the change, there's always Ford." His words infuriated more than just employees. Investors began to wonder who controls the company if the founder allows himself such statements at a time when the stock is losing tens of billions in capitalization.
Hey Diane, this investigation really just beginning, and one of the key elements will of course be the surveillance video, and investigators potentially have a lot of it to work with as they try to figure out what caused this fire. We know that surveillance footage has been turned over, including video from each of the cars, which could prove vital to understanding what happened here, because each vehicle has its own camera system that works even when the car is off, and 16 cars burned in this fire, and right now investigators don't know what caused it.
But if the human resource began to fall apart, logistics literally came to a halt. The disruption of shipments from Canada and Europe mentioned earlier was only the beginning. In early May, one of the key suppliers of sensors, Germany's Electronics AG, abruptly cancelled its contract, citing a strategic mismatch. The French aluminum component maker demanded an upfront payment of €83 million for deliveries, a demand that had never been made before. Such moves were not economic necessity, they were political signals. The world no longer saw Tesla as a partner that could be trusted. In response, Tesla rushed to find alternatives. In Colombia and Argentina, urgent negotiations began for lithium and cobalt supplies. In Namibia, rough contracts were signed to mine rare earth metals. But the whole process required months of certification, logistical rearrangements, and jurisdictional approval. And there was no time. Production at the Texas plant was cut by 40%. 2 of the 5 Nevada facilities came to a complete halt due to a lack of components. And this in a company where the production model was based on the principle of just-in-time. Deliveries must arrive exactly at the time of assembly, with no inventory.
I mean, the things that he's doing is not trying to make America better. He's ruining our infrastructure, every department in our government. He's ruining, and he's right now destroying our economy. He's taken away all of our allies. We're a pariah in the world.
Panic broke out in the logistics department. Employees worked 16 hours a day, trying to move batches of components between factories, finding ways around the blocked borders. One engineer, who requested anonymity, said we were loading motors into private vans to avoid idle time. At one point, we were taking batteries from Arizona to Texas in regular pickup trucks. It was nonsense. But it was the only way to not get up completely. Costs soared. The cost of assembling a single model went up $5,800 in just 2 months. At the same time, dealers began dropping orders en masse, fearing that customers simply wouldn't buy cars with a tarnished reputation. And it was tarnished. In addition to internal leaks and external sanctions, Tesla began to lose the battle for public opinion. And it wasn't about the products, it was about Musk.
Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged, there's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
That's when the first signs began to emerge that this was no longer a crisis of one company. It's a symptom of a much larger collapse, because you can replace a battery, rebuild the supply chain, and establish new logistics routes. But you can't quickly restore faith. And when you lose those who created your future, there's nowhere to go back to. While chaos grew inside Tesla, outside the US borders, the world wasn't just watching the fall. It was using it as a launching platform for its own reboot. And while Elon Musk argued with regulators on Twitter, others acted in silence. While Tesla was trying to replace suppliers and reconfigure production, competitors were constructing an alternate reality in which there was no room for an American flag on the hood of an electric car. It wasn't just a battle for market share. It was a remaking of the global energy map, where Tesla was no longer listed as a focal point.
But they are not ruling out the possibility that this was arson. At the same time, as you just mentioned, there are groups that have been organizing ongoing and peaceful protests at Tesla dealerships around the world. These demonstrations targeting Elon Musk and his affiliation with the Trump administration. Also, Italy's prime minister is said to be close friends with Musk, and there were reports that Teslas have been vandalized in her hometown in Italy. Diane.
In Europe, which Tesla had long considered its second home after the US, more than a trade embargo had begun. Volkswagen, which had lurked in the face of Musk's high-profile announcements in previous years, launched a series of fuel-efficient electric cars under the Audi, Skoda and Cup brands, produced on a single MEB platform. Not only did these cars do without imported batteries, they were assembled in fully localized factories, certified under the new EU sustainability standards. Thanks to this, Volkswagen not only avoided new duties and regulatory barriers, it became a symbol of the new Europe, independent, responsible, technological.
And police in Italy are investigating possible arson after a fire destroyed more than a dozen Tesla vehicles. Elon Musk is calling the incident at a Rome dealership terrorism. This comes as Tesla has been the target of recent protests around the world.
While Tesla was losing hundreds of millions on the storage of unsold cars in the ports of Rotterdam and La Rochelle, Volkswagen opened new charging stations with the support of European municipalities. In May, the German concern signed memorandums with the governments of Spain, the Czech Republic and Romania to supply more than 200,000 electric cars for the needs of the local fleet. Tesla was not even invited to participate. In France, Tesla's share of government car purchases fell to zero, according to an internal report by the Transportation Ministry. Instead, local manufacturers and Chinese brands with European co-production were favored. But the real blow came from where you wouldn't expect. Asia. China's BYD, long underestimated as a regional giant, suddenly went on the global offensive. While Tesla was losing logistical ties, BYD signed long-term contracts with Chile and the Democratic Republic of Congo to mine lithium and cobalt, guaranteeing a 9-year supply of key components. Its government support allowed it to literally subsidize exports. In some countries, BYD could sell cars cheaper than production cost, knowing that losses were being offset by government programs.
Well, you will hear people over in Europe say the new Model Y, the Juniper, could be a difference maker, but that's been in that market now for more than a month. And you would think that you'd see a greater snapback if it's going to be a difference maker. Look, we could be wrong. It could be a difference maker once you get the sales for April, May, and June. But when you have a country like Norway, I think the sales were down something like 11% there. I mean, that's a very savvy EV consumer in Norway. And that's long been a strength for Tesla. very small market, not huge volume, but I think almost all of the vehicles they sell there are electric. And they embraced Tesla long before others. And, you know, the reports there are not encouraging.
In the markets of South Africa, Thailand, Argentina, and Indonesia, Tesla almost disappeared. In its place, governments bought Chinese electric buses, BYD cars, and even low-cost EV sedans for policies. In Brazil, municipalities began replacing previously purchased Model 3s with BYD Dolphin, citing a simplified service and delivery system. Moreover, in May 2025, it was revealed that BYD had signed an agreement with the Canadian government to launch its own assembly plant in British Columbia, the same place where Tesla was previously expected to expand. The contract came with incentives and direct investment in infrastructure. It wasn't just business, it was strategic displacement.
A 371, most were saying 350 to 360. Now they're coming in at 336,068. Production of 362,615. So for some point of reference here, you're going back to Q2, maybe Q1 of 2022 in terms of the last time that they had production this or deliveries this low for one quarter. So again, Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
That's horrible. Can I just ask Phil, how about the Cybertruck? How's that doing? You got a little inventory there in the Cybertruck?
And that's when the real conversations began in the corridors of power in the US. What's next? There were three options. The first was the path of reconciliation. Return to the negotiating table with Canada, Europe, Asia. Cancel the duties, restore lost treaties, admit mistakes. But this meant a political blow to the administration, especially on the eve of the elections. The second way was to strengthen domestic production. Massive subsidies for lithium mining in the US, building new factories, accelerated licensing. But that takes years, and the crisis is already here. The third way is the darkest: cooperation with authoritarian regimes. Venezuela, Iran, Congo. In exchange for resources, silence, and loyalty. But the price for such a deal is reputation. And all these ways are bad, but we have to choose, because the electric revolution doesn't wait. And trust, once broken, cannot be restored by fiat. Tesla didn't just lose markets, it's lost trust. And that means it's lost time, and maybe the future itself.